and gentlemen, without further ado, let's begin the second webinar for MIA Digital Month 2025 with a panel session on building trust and managing risk in AI. The moderator for this session is Mr. Bryan Chung, member of the Digital Technology Implementation Committee, DTIC MIA. Bryan is presently an Executive Director of True Vine Capital Partners, a venture capital funds manager in Singapore. He has over 25 years of experience as a senior executive in investment banking, venture capital, and digital finance, including being the COO of an equity crowdfunding platform and executive director of a digital wallet service provider in Malaysia. Bryan served as an independent director at CPA Australia Limited, where he is a member of the Audit, Risk and Compliance Committee. He is also an accredited director under the auspices of Singapore Institute of Directors. Additionally, Bryan is a fellow of CPA Australia and served on CPA Australia's Malaysia Divisional Council and pioneered the Digital Transformation Committee. He is also a fellow of Chartered Institute of Management Accountants (CIMA) and a member of ASEAN CPA. And joining him as panelists today are Mr. Yuen, partner Ernst & Young Consulting, Sdn Bhd. Jason is a technology consulting partner and also EY's Malaysia cybersecurity leader, overseeing a team of over 100 cybersecurity professionals. Jason has over 27 years of experience in the industry, serving multiple roles and working with clients across various industries, including financial services, telecommunication, manufacturing, energy and utilities, as well as government. His key areas of focus include cybersecurity, risk management, data privacy and protection, business continuity, and crisis management. Jason has been an active speaker in the industry globally and regionally and has spoken at various key events. He was a past president of ISACA, Malaysia chapter, and also served on ISACA International's working group on governmental and regulatory agencies. Next, our panelist is Ms. Jeanne Viljoen, Principal Standards Development and Technical Project, International Ethics Standards Board for Accountant IESBA. Jeanne currently leads the Technology Working Group and Emerging Issues Oversight Committee. She is also involved in the collective investment vehicles, pension funds, and investment company complex project. Prior to joining IESBA, Jeanne worked at Mazars South Africa in the Quality and Risk Management Department. Before joining Mazars South Africa, Jeanne worked at the South Africa Institute for Chartered Accountants as Project Director, Ethics and Practices. Jeanne is a chartered accountant and a member of the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants and Independent Regulatory Board for Auditors South Africa. And the last panelist for today is Mr. Amir Syafiq Abdul Halim, Manager of AI Innovation at Change National AI Office NAIO. Amir Syafiq is an experienced IT professional with a strong background in digital transformation and agile project delivery. He currently serves as an AI Innovation Manager at NAIO, where he leads efforts to drive AI and adoptions and promote the integrations of AI technologies across various sectors. Previously, Amir held the role of Digital Delivery Manager Scrum Master at TMB, where he successfully managed digital initiatives and ensured seamless project execution using agile methodologies. Mr. Bryan, I'll pass the floor to you.
Thank you, Nurul, and thank you to the MIA team, for giving me and the rest of the panelists this opportunity. So good morning to all the participants. Give yourself a pat, in waking up early, and I understand that traffic it's very heavy because of the downpour this morning, but you still made it, and and I hope you can really benefit from this session. So I'm going to start by dampening slightly the enthusiasm surrounding AI. So AI presents us with a multifaceted challenge because it's not just about developing sophisticated algorithms. It's equally about ensuring these algorithms are secure, they respect our privacy, and they operate within an ethical framework. So as users, we have to frame AI not as a singular technological marvel, but as a complex entity with interconnected dimensions that require careful consideration. Next slide, please. So AI has woven itself into the fabric of our daily existence, a silent yet powerful force shaping how we live, work, and interact. Next slide. Let me ask you these questions. When you search for something online, how do you think the search engine knows which results to show you first? Have you ever wondered how your social media feed seems to know exactly what you want to see? How do online stores recommend products for you based on your browsing or purchase history? And how do websites and apps use your location data to provide you with relevant information or services? Next slide. So just recently, we had people jumping into this Ghibli bandwagon. Now, if I were to ask how many in the audience who have actually fed their photos into one of the many AI apps, I'm sure I will see many hands. Okay. But if I ask, did you consider privacy before uploading, onto, say, ChatGPT or other apps? I am not sure, how many hands will go up. So as companies race to apply AI in their operations to achieve efficiency, that brings us to AI Trism, a framework developed by Gartner to assist companies in developing guardrails around the use of AI. Next slide. So what are the principles? So T stands for trust, and trust refers to the confidence and reliability in an AI system's performance and outcomes. It encompasses ethical considerations, transparency, and fairness in decision-making. RI stands for risk. Risk involves identifying potential threats to an AI system's performance, security, and privacy. This includes understanding the limitations and vulnerabilities of the technology being used. And SM stands for security management. Security management focuses on safeguarding data and systems from unauthorized access, manipulation, or misuse. And there are 5 foundational pillars around TRISM. So I'll go through. So this is really for the benefit of the members of MIA, who may not know this TRISM framework. So this will be very good knowledge, as your companies look to implement AI, as part of the tools, to increase efficiency. This is a framework that you could actually apply, right? As you enforce AI, in a company. So the first foundational pillar, next slide, is explainability. So explainability in AI is essential for building trust and transparency in AI systems. Transparent AI systems allow users to understand how AI decisions are made and why certain outcomes are produced. The second, model ops. This is life cycle management of AI models, which is critical for ensuring scalability, reliability, and continuous improvement. Model ops encompasses the processes and tools used to develop, to deploy, to monitor, and maintain AI models throughout their life cycle. The third one is data anomaly detection. So detecting inconsistencies in data is essential for improving the accuracy and fairness of AI systems. Data anomaly detection involves identifying and addressing anomalies or outliers in training data that may skew AI model outputs or introduce biases. The fourth one is adversarial attack resistance. So protecting AI systems from malicious attacks and cyber threats is critical for maintaining data security and system integrity. Adversarial attack resistance involves implementing robust security measures to defend against various attack vectors, such as adversarial examples, data poisoning attacks, or model inversion attacks. And the last, data protection. Safeguarding data accuracy and privacy is critical to ensure the integrity and confidentiality of sensitive information. And data protection involves implementing measures to secure data throughout its life cycle, including encryption, access controls, and data anonymization. So these are the five, foundational pillars, that kind of underpin this TRISM. So your next question you may ask is, how do I apply, right, TRISM, in my companies? And this can be actually applied across various sectors. Of course, we can't cover every single sector, but I can give you some examples. Next slide. Financial services. So financial institutions, banks use AI, to do fraud detection. So implementing AI TRISM ensures that AI-driven fraud detection operate within ethical guidelines while maintaining accuracy and minimizing false positives. In healthcare, patient data management. So TRISM framework ensures the protection of sensitive patient data, aligning, with regulations and enhancing patient trust. We have retail and e-commerce. We share a lot of data, with e-commerce platforms. So AI TRISM guides the ethical use of AI in personalizing customer experiences, ensuring that data handling and customer profiling respect privacy norms. We also have the public sector, and I know our government, is encouraging the application of AI tools, in the day-to-day administration of the government. So we could see application of TRISM in smart city initiatives. So AI TRISM ensures that AI applications in traffic management, public safety, and utility services are transparent, fair, and secure. And last but not least, cybersecurity. So AI TRISM frameworks enhance the reliability and accuracy of AI systems to detect and respond to cyber threats, minimize false positives, and ensuring rapid response to real threats. Okay, next slide. So how would you implement these principles? Okay, so there are 4 steps to it. So the first one is understand your organization's objectives and values. So this is very crucial in determining the ethical considerations and potential risks associated with implementing AI. Second, assess your AI systems. So assuming you already have some sort of AI working through your company system. So conduct a thorough assessment of the AI systems being used, including their capabilities and limitations. Identify any potential risks related to trust, security, or privacy. Third, develop governance policies. Establish governance policies that address trust, risk, and security management specific to your organization's needs. And lastly, monitor and review regularly. So we need to review the effectiveness of the governance policies to identify any shortcomings or new risks that may arise. Next slide. So this morning you signed up for this, and I'm pretty sure you have a reason, you have a purpose for doing so. Perhaps you understand the importance of having guardrails around the use of AI. And as an accountant, and I'm assuming most of you are accountants, whether it's in the public sector or the private sector, you probably ask, so how can I play a role, in this particular aspect, of AI? So what are the role of accountants then? So the first one is risk assessment and management, which is, pretty obvious, yeah. Because as accountants, we are guardians of data, we are stewards of data. So accountants are skilled at identifying and evaluating financial and operational risks. They need to extend expertise to understand the unique risks introduced by AI, such as algorithmic bias leading to inaccurate financial reporting, data security vulnerabilities in AI systems. So this is just one example, where you are the guardian, of that risk framework. Accountants can also ensure that AI risks are integrated into an existing enterprise risk management frameworks and audit plans. For those accountants who are working for public listed companies, this AI, will definitely have to be one of the agenda items and one, of the aspects of the enterprise risk management. Second, internal controls and governance. So you as an accountant, you can assess the design and effectiveness of internal controls. So it's not just about financial internal controls, but it's also internal controls over AI systems. And this could include controls around data input, processing, and output, as well as access controls and change management for AI models. Okay. Third, data integrity and quality, as you know, and you probably have heard, rubbish in, rubbish out, right? So AI models are only as good as the data they are trained on. So accountants can leverage their expertise in data quality and integrity to ensure that the data used to train AI systems is accurate, complete, and reliable. Fourth, regulatory compliance and audit. So accountants will play a very key role in auditing AI systems used for financial reporting. So this requires understanding the technical aspects of AI and working with IT auditors to assess the reliability and trustworthiness of AI-driven financial data. And last, and certainly not the least, is ethical consideration. So accountants do have this role from the ethics point of view. Accountants have a professional obligation to act ethically. They can contribute to discussions around ethical implications of using AI in finance, such as potential biases, in algorithms or the impact of AI on employment in the accounting professions. So we're going to have a discussion around this later on the aspects of ethics. Next slide. So this will be my last slide before we go into our panel session. What is the guiding star? And I think AI Trism provides that kind of guiding star, that accountants should look at. So compliance plays a very crucial role. And responsible AI goes beyond ticking boxes. So as accountants, we should not just be focused, on ticking the boxes and that's it. So AI Trism paves the way for the development of AI systems that not only deliver on their functional promises, but also benefit society and earn user trust. So this goes beyond short-term gains and focuses on the long-term impact of AI. So today, our panel will unpack the key elements of AI Trism, exploring how we can build trustworthy AI systems that are not only powerful, but also responsible and beneficial to society. All right, so I'll get the panelists in. And today we have a stellar lineup of panelists here who can offer, their diverse viewpoints about the use of AI and, how AI Trism, could be the framework, to help you navigate the complexities of AI. Now, before I start with the first question, I just want to comment, about our posture and attitude towards, when we talk about AI risk, security, and trust. I just want to share an experience. So I'm on a board of a few companies, and recently, not recently, maybe last year, we spoke about, the implementation of AI, and it got everyone excited, right? Because we read a lot of content, in the media, people share stories, about how effective AI is, in bringing down the costs. So in board discussions, we were all just discussing, right, about the potential, right, and the applications of AI tools. And we were all saying, let's just do it. Let's just do it, right? Let's just not waste time. Let's just do it. But I was thankful, as a board, there were other people, who highlighted the issue about, setting up a proper framework of governance, setting up a proper framework of controls, to ensure, that the data that the company collects, from its customers and users are protected and used properly. Okay, so that gave me a little bit of a jolt, because in the midst, in this excitement, right, of seeing how AI tools, can be used to benefit companies, we must not forget, that we have to put guardrails around this use of AI. So the posture and the attitude that we need to have as accountants, as members of MIA, and I'm guessing, that you are playing a role, in some sort of a control or governance in the company. It is important and it's incumbent on the accountant to raise issues like this. Yeah. So where there is that excitement, we need to temper it down, with reality, right? That some of this data, if it's not protected properly, and the use of this AI, when the data output is being churned out, we have to question, how reliable it is. So we need to challenge, some of this instead of just being swept away by this excitement. So I just want to put it out there, so that when we go through, the discussions later on, this is a session, it's not just to tick a box, but it's really to help you as an accountant implement, such a framework to protect the company. So I just want to throw it out to the panelists. Would you have anything to add before we dive into the questions? Maybe we can start with Jason.
Sure. Thanks, Bryan. Really just, I guess, to build a bit on what you're saying and what we are seeing in the industry. I think many clients and organizations are really jumping on the bandwagon of AI, exactly as you said. And then some of the key things that we are seeing actually as we look at that is that what are the real use cases that make sense to the organization? And really, a lot of clients are starting to say, okay, the machine learning components, things about pattern recognitions, data that helps decisions and things like that, that's working very well. But many organizations we are also seeing is struggling to really get the full value of the generative component of AI. So what are the sort of use cases in terms of generative AI that really help our organization? There's a lot of stuff, of course, out there. We have the Ghibli, the graphics, we have maybe writing reports, things like that, or crafting your emails. And of course, many organizations probably adopt things like chatbots and so. But I think one of the things in the industry we're studying here is that what else besides that, that we can capture on. And those are some of the things we're starting to see clients look at.
All right. Thanks, Jason. Jeanne?
Thanks, Bryan. Yeah, just building on what Jason said, is definitely seeing that as professional accountants are exploring how to use it more and more, just beyond just drafting an email or the nice little images that we have, is kind of remembering that the ethical principles that's contained in the code, those fundamental principles are so key and actually helps you to navigate when you get confronted with these things. What you mentioned, Bryan, in your example and during your presentations, how many of you thought about the confidentiality when you shared all your photos with everybody else that you took pictures of? Did you think about that when you opened up your gallery? So those are the things that is very important only in business as well, not only in your personal life. And the code of ethics actually speaks to that, a lot of the fundamental principles, and having that role and the mindset when you are excited about this new technology, of thinking through the principles and applying them and identifying any threat that might be posed to them. Thanks, Bryan.
Thanks, Ron. Amir?
Hi, morning, Bryan. Thank you. I just want to echo on one of the word that you mentioned about ethical of using AI itself, right? So yeah, AI is all about innovation, but at the same time, we need to have a security in place. So we cannot just drive on the innovation as well as ethical on how we use AI on our daily tasks, the data that we put in. So yeah, I think later on we will discuss further on that area. Back to you, Bryan. Thank
All
you.
right, thanks. Yeah. So with that, I guess right posture, right attitude and mindset, right, towards trust, risk, and security. Let's dive into this AI TRISM framework, right? So question to you, Jason. So from your perspective, how do you see the interplay between trust, risk, and security in the context of AI? Can you provide examples of how a failure in one area can impact the others?
Sure. I think these are three very strong interrelated components if you think about it, even very logically, right? From the terms trust, security, and risk. But if we put it together, trust would almost seem like the main pillar behind this thing. And if you look at it, right, why that would be so? Basically, if you think about it, a breakdown in security would impact your overall trust. A concern in the sense of a higher level of risk would impact your overall trust. And if we come back to the concept of trust, I think you mentioned it a bit earlier, right? What is trust if you think about it, or what drives us to actually have trust in something? I think two parts you mentioned just now, really the performance and the reliability. Do we actually get what we want out of something? And in this case, of course, the AI system. And getting what we want out of that system can actually be impacted in a way by what would happen from a risk perspective and a security perspective. All right. I probably just give a very simple analogy. Let's talk about maybe our calculator. Probably all of us here are super good at using the calculator and so forth, right? But imagine if our calculator is trained on the internet rather than actually making a mathematical computation. The calculator has chips, right? And it uses the ones and zeros, bits, and so forth, and it makes an actual computation, and we trust it because every time you punch it, 2 + 2 is always 2. But imagine the calculator was actually a different kind of model, and the calculator was actually trained on getting answers from the internet and learning by itself what are some mathematical formulas. And imagine then the data sources that it gets is really unrestricted. You would potentially get data sources where 2 + 2 does not equal 4 always. 2 + 2 could be something else. Imagine just from social media, jokes, from everything. The challenge then is that once we unleash a learning model out there on that basis, we may then get times when my calculator prefers to answer 2 + 2 equals something else. So those, if you think about it, impacts really the trust in my whole model, because I no longer have the reliability of always getting 2 + 2 equals to 4. And that's probably an easy way to think about some of the concerns that we have.
All right. So in your opinion, trust is the underlying pillar. Okay, and then the other two sits on top of it, right? Because it has to start with that trust in the system first.
Yeah, contributes heavily to really creating trust. Of course, there are probably quite a number of other factors, right? You always hear in around the circles of AI, we talk about things like ethics, fairness, inclusion. And I think in Malaysia, we also have principles, for example, doing good to people,
Yep.
national related principles and things like that, right? So I think there are quite a number of factors there. But definitely, I would say that if you think about it, trust is probably a very huge component or core pillar in this whole area.
Okay, so that's a very important point, and I think the message to users and accountants out there, and I fall into the trap as well. We tend to get excited over a tool, whether it's ChatGPT or Gemini. We type a prompt, type something, a request, it comes out, and then immediately, right, we kind of accept it, as opposed to looking at it and analyzing. Is this really true, or is it hallucinating? So I think that's a very important point. That we always have to be very careful you know, when we use AI tools, right? Because the output, you know, may not be something that is true, something that's accurate. All right. Jeanne, anything to add in this point here?
Maybe just something small, and I was just thinking about what the role of a professional accountant is, and is to build the public, and it's to act in the public interest, and that's where the trust comes from. If you can't rely on a professional accountant's work, and when they use artificial intelligence, that trust is lost. And so I do agree with Jason. I think that's kind of the key pillar, and it speaks to what we as professional accountants do on a daily basis, excluding the technological side thereof.
Yeah, yeah. And we speak a lot about, you know, the future of the accounting profession, right? You know, and how it's going to evolve. But one thing does not change, right? When we survey, when we ask people, you know, why do you think accountants are still relevant, still important? I think the one thing that stands out is trust. And we cannot lose that very important aspect, right, of you know, the accounting profession. So absolutely right. Amir, anything you want to add?
On trust, I would say tools that I'm pretty sure that everyone nowadays are using tools like DeepSeek, ChatGPT, to be exact. I mean, the data that you want to put in, we have to consider whether is it sensitive or right, because we don't know where the data flows, and if you know Gen AI, they are crawling everywhere. We some other people, unethical AI users, might be able to retrieve the data. So my advice will be mindful on the data that we want to put in, and on each of the AI tools that available now on the market.
Okay, thank you. Okay, my next question is, in practice, how can organizations foster a unified approach to managing these three elements rather than treating them as separate silos? Amir, would you like to take that?
Yeah, sure. As a study, we have done some studies, and we also find out that in many organizations, these three pillars, which is trust, risk, and security, live in separate silos. Means that it owns IT owns the security part, compliance owns the risk, and legal owns the ethics and trust. So I think in this case, we need to bring them somehow together. Point number one is always to establish a AI governance council. A theme of a governance council. Is for example, we can do a cross-functional membership to include representative from IT security, risk compliance, legal ethics, or finance, as well as business lines. From there, we can oversee all AI initiatives from end to end, with unified reporting and decision, and do a decision making through the team itself. Number two is to adopt more common AI lifecycle, I would say, lifecycle framework, starting from data collection, model development, then start with deployment. From there, we can monitor each of the phase, which including the trust checkpoints, risk assessment, and security tests. Point number three, I would say maybe we can have a shared KPI among this collaboration, shared KPI and a dashboard, which we might need to develop integrated metrics. Say, for example, a percentage of model with documentation, numbers of security incident, or a stakeholder, maybe trust score, and also to report them on a single dashboard, so that we can have a single dashboard where the governance council or the team that we have put together or collaborate together to like daily have a look at the reports. Yeah. Last but not least, I would say is always the change management or a training and culture, which we should always run a joint workshop for all these three functions to look at the real world case studying that show how security may flaw, which can erode the public trust, or maybe hidden model bias, which can escalate to operational risk. On top of that, we would always encourage rotational or secondments within team to build more mutual empathy and also shared experience.
Thanks, Amir. You brought up all very important points. I didn't manage to capture all of it, but all very important points, and I can share from my experience as well. One of the companies, that I'm on the board, I'm in the board.
Right.
They want to implement AI, and we discovered that we cannot work in silo. Means one department, which is of course usually it's the IT department, right? That's going to implement the AI.
Right.
They will run with it, but we realized that we need to bring in the legal department into it. We need to bring in the commercial team as well. We need to bring in the some of the C-suite guys, because we need the buy-in, right, from at the C-suite level. So we ended up forming a group, like a committee, to implement such application of AI. So I think this is a very important point, for those members out there, you are thinking of implementation of AI in your company. Change management, sorry, you mentioned about change management. These are very important considerations. So it's not just about getting the fanciest tool out there, and using it, but it's really organization as a whole. How do you get the different departments working together, making sure that we contain the risk, at the same time we use those AI tools, to bring efficiency benefits, etc. So it's really organization as a whole, rather than different departments. Anyone got anything else to add, Jeanne or Jason?
Maybe if I can jump in and don't have anything specific to add, but maybe just thinking it's besides just from a silo approach, I think it's really much from a culture in an organization, having this unified approach rather than having a siloed approach. I think it's really the tone at the top that sets this. So you're in your organization, you need to encourage this or promote that, or actually be providing that insight into having a collaborative environment to have to think of all three at the same time.
Yeah. So the keyword is collaborative environment. Yeah. Okay. So this is really the science of where our conditions right now, our environment right now, we need to collaborate. Not departments competing against one department, but we need to collaborate, in order to get the best results. Jason, anything to add?
Yeah, and I think some of the practical lessons we've learned, I think working with some organizations, for example, recently, I think we helped one of the large banks to build an AI governance model. It's really to integrate a lot of these into your existing processes. So, for example, technology projects. Really, if you already have a process in terms of technology projects, how you govern technology projects, what you need to do and look at it in terms of compliance, legal, regulatory, right? How you want to fit then AI into that, what is defined. I think one of the key things at the start, right? What's defined as AI versus maybe a more traditional project. And really then what is the really use cases and the level of risk to the organization. And that will drive different sort of governance requirements that you see, really in terms of how much you want to check, how much you want to review. And to some of the points you mentioned earlier, right? You may even need to split it to different levels of working groups where maybe a less complex item with less reach over the organization is something that a lower level team can look at. Something that reaches to customers, external, and so forth is something that very senior people and maybe needs to escalate it up to the top. So in terms of practical operationalization of your governance framework, something to think about.
Yeah. So it's also important, I guess, to get viewpoints, right, from the different departments. So, gone are the days, right, when just the IT department, right, is involved. So they are the ones that determine, they are the ones that decide, and they are the ones that will roll out. We no longer operate in that kind of environment. We will need viewpoints from all the different departments, in a company, so that we make the best decisions, and then we know when we roll it out, we have all our grounds covered. Yeah. All right. I'll move to the next section, which is risk. Okay, so just now we spoke about the interconnectedness of trust, risk, and security. Let's speak about now on risk across the spectrum. And this will be relevant to those who are accountants and who are also board members, especially those on the audit and the risk committee. Yeah. So given the interconnected nature, how does a risk assessment framework for AI need to evolve to consider potential impacts on trust and security? Amir, would you like to take this?
Sorry, yeah. Okay, so in NAIO points of view, traditional risk framework, for example, let's take, for example, the ISO 31000, which are more focused on the likelihood and impact and in the AI arena, I think we need to like evolve it a little bit or expand the risk categories. For example, number one is on the trust risk, as you mentioned earlier, the probability that stakeholders or customers lose confidence in AI decision. Take, for example, in healthcare industry, right? So say, for example, we wanted to use AI as part of the diagnosis of a cancer. So from our point of view in NAIO, AI serves as a tool, not to like a tool that to assist the doctors itself, not to like 100% take on the decision that made by AI. So yeah, number two is the risk, security risk, which is the likelihood of data model compromise, which is can be a data poisoning or model intervention or attacks, etc. And on ethical risk, sit at the intersection, which is can lead to unfair outcomes that can damage both trust and reputation itself. Point number two that I would like to put in is on the dynamic threat model, which update the threat model continuously as a new vulnerabilities arise, as we grow, as we develop new things. There always a new risk that comes in, or a new attack techniques, right? So map the security threats to a downstream, which is to a downstream trust impact. For example, if a model theft occurs, customer will perceive our service as unsafe. So yeah, we want to look at that area. Last but not least, I would say on the integrated risk register, which is we can maintain a single register where each risk entry captures a trust, security, and operational dimension, with clear owners and mitigation plans that address all three simultaneously. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe Jason, in your experience with dealing with public listed companies, do you have anything you want to add? Some perspectives?
Sure. I think building a bit on what Amir said, right? I think our traditional risk assessment model still works in terms of the core process. What's the differentiator then is really how we understand the core risks. I think as Amir was mentioning, what are those risks? And one of the ways to think about it, or actually two parts, right? The first one is in terms of what are the AI related risks. I think Amir gave a good viewpoint. And really, if you dissect it, two parts that can impact, either the model or the data, if it comes back to it, how can you actually tamper with an AI in one sense or another? It's an impact to the data or its impact to the model in that kind of sense. And some of those key considerations there you want to think about. But the second item I think that's important to think about when we look at AI risks is that I think we've mentioned it a few times today, and even Amir mentioned it, is that we've got to think about AI in a life cycle, right? So we mentioned it a bit earlier. We've got to consider risks in the design process. The design process really in terms of the use case, what are we trying to solve with the AI? What is the AI trying to target there? So risk assessment will be done there. Then from the data phase, right? Looking at the types of data it needs to ingest, what that data sources is and so forth. That itself is considerations of risk. Then there's actually the algorithm or really the sort of the program, if you think about it, or the model. What are the risks potentially there? But probably the last one, which is less traditional for us most of the time, is the ongoing risk. Because if you think about it, AI as a self-learning machine, what my results are now may not be the results in the future if I keep learning things. And that's therefore a key important risk for us to keep in mind versus maybe a very traditional computer program, right? The calculator example comes back to play, right? But if I keep learning more and more data, let's say a bank loan system, always the example given to everyone is that if you have a bank loan system and you teach it all the items, it will come to certain, or it may come to certain conclusions that may exclude certain people groups. It may exclude certain locations. For example, certain locations more prone to NPLs, less repayment, start to exclude those items and things like that, which are actually not desirous, right? And let's say if we are very good and we've sort of isolated that out from both our model and our data, and we make sure that is the case. The challenge then is that if we unleash the machine to continue learning, will it still give us the same results 3 months, 6 months, 1 year, and 2 years down the road? Those are probably some key things to think about. So the last part, I think, is probably a good reminder.
Okay. So, I mean, it tells us that what all these algorithms and all this AI machine learning is, they try to detect patterns, right? And from those patterns, it will come up with some sort of a conclusion. So I guess it's pattern driven and data driven. But at the end of the day, there has to be also, as you said just now, maybe the ethical part of it. Maybe, like you say, according to certain locations or certain background of people, we will need to, I guess, tweak the machines. So we can still train the machines, to still approve certain loans, by us intervening, as opposed to just allowing the machines to just, decide according, to its free will.
Correct. Yeah. And just to build on that, I guess a common question that we get asked, or in fact, people start to take that challenge, is that, if the AI does something, who becomes accountable? I think that's actually quite a simple question if we go back to the basics, right? Think of the AI as a computer system. And to me, as a corporate entity or an organization, if an organization uses the AI or uses a computer system, we can't really escape accountability in any sense. Of course, recently in Malaysia, there was all this flag fiasco. I won't go into the agree, don't agree, whatever, right? But if you think about it, anyone who uses a computer system to generate an output or rely on it for the output, you can't really shirk the responsibility of that output being tied to your organization. I think if you go back to that core principle, it answers a lot of those questions.
Okay. Well presented. Jeanne, anything you want to add, or we can move on to the next?
Okay, move on to the next question.
All
That's
right.
fine.
Okay. So in the event of an AI-related incident, how can organizations manage the crisis in a way that addresses the immediate security breach while also working to rebuild trust and mitigate future risks? Jason, would you want to try?
Sure. I think this is really in line, if you think about it, with almost how anyone within our organization would do. Let's say within our customer service, and maybe a very traditional thing that can happen is that customers sort of we berate our staff berate a customer, and it comes out on social media and things like that, very negative impact to us. How would we actually react to that process? What would we do? I think that same sort of process answers what we need to do when we have an AI system, right? Now, if we have an AI system for decision making, the positive part is hopefully we still have some checks, validation before the outputs go out, right? Coming to the flag incident, I guess that validation didn't happen. But on other parts, let's say it's like a more traditional where everyone has a chatbot. You're not going to validate what your chatbot answers, right? And to some extent then is that if the chatbot runs free and to some extent later on the chatbot learns the wrong thing, I don't know whether some of you saw, right? Some of the AI researchers show that you can keep talking to AI to the extent that at the end, AI will tell you go and die. It almost gets fed up with you in that kind of sense. Imagine your chatbot does that. What do you do? And in those kind of circumstances, treat it to me at the end of the day like your company's representation, your employee. You have to react. Do you have the process? So do you have the process to detect that's happening? That's one. Do you have the process to respond? And really, how do you mitigate that potentially in the future? So that life cycle monitoring is actually quite important as well.
I think it's the same for cybersecurity incidents as well, right?
Absolutely.
And I think most of the companies, there should be a what we call it, crisis management plan or incident response plan. Yeah, and I guess it applies to AI as well.
Absolutely.
And that example about the flag, I think that is really a good example, as to how something that can go wrong if there's not no sufficient checks and balances.
Correct. Yeah. I quickly pick on that, and I remember a personal case, right? Over the last weekend, my wife was trying to solve a mathematical problem for my 10-year-old son. She couldn't solve it, and she snapped a picture with her phone on ChatGPT. Just the free version, ChatGPT. And ChatGPT can give you a fantastic solution. The problem actually is that we trusted that solution as the solution's supposed to be correct. But if you think about it, right, all of us know, or you may have heard of cases where AI not necessarily correct. For example, like watches, right? AI tends to show a watch in a specific time because most of the images on the internet show watches at a specific time because watches look good at that time. The other thing I think people will notice also is that AI sometimes has problems with rendering fingers, things like that. And you talk about the Ghibli example, right? A lot of us go around, right? For some reason, sometimes AI ignores certain people in your picture. You have 7 people in your group photo, you put it in and generate this for me in a cartoon. For some reason, one fellow gets left out. Now, we consider all that okay, no issue. But then if you think of it, right, when I come back to the example of my wife, mathematical formula, I assume is correct. It's supposed to be correct and I don't challenge it. And you think about it, if on a generative scenario of images, graphics, text, it can make errors, it definitely can make errors in a mathematical computation as well.
Wow. Okay, that's really a great way of putting it. Anyone else? Anything to add on this point? No? Okay.
No, I just want to just add on what Jason said just now. He said that there's 7 people in the picture, and then the AI did not detect the other person, right? But what if in the you put it another way around? You have 7 people, then suddenly there's another person out of the back.
Invisible or
even scarier.
unseen forces. Okay, let's move on to the next segment, which is on security as a foundation for trust and risk mitigation. So Jeanne, I would like to get your opinion on this. So how can organizations balance the need for data access and processing for effective AI while maintaining data security and user privacy, which are crucial for trust?
So thanks, Bryan, for the question. Ethics is essential to the proper functioning of organizations. We all know this. Financial markets and economies worldwide. And I've spoken about the fundamental principles. We all know the 5 fundamental principles in the code. And that is foundational to the ethical behavior of organizations and underpin the integrity and the credibility of both financial and non-financial information that is generated, sometimes with artificial intelligence models as well. And I spoke about the organizational culture being important as well, in the sense that it integrates this, having this approach that strengthens the public trust in the professional accountants and safeguards their well-being and sustainability organizations, and ultimately serve the public interest and protect the public interest there as well. But how is the examples of how we can ensure that this is not just kind of guidelines is actually operationalized and how in the processes and deployment. So it's having this ethics by design approach. So ethics should be integrated from the earliest stages when you start developing artificial intelligence. And we spoke about the life cycle, the data life cycle from the beginning to the end. And the code actually speaks to that as well, specifically that when you speak about data, which is included in the artificial intelligence models, is that you should know exactly when it's generated, how you discard of it, and how it's being used as well. So we spoke earlier also that ethics should that it should not just be defined to one department. It should be collaborative between the departments as well. But it's those business leaders that is encouraging this collaborative work between the departments as well. And then the other one that also is that compliance with regulatory requirements specifically, like if we think about GDPR of data privacy and security. So you need to be aware of this as well when you start using artificial intelligence models. You can't just put anything in there which is confidential. We all know this. It's everybody should know this by now, but sometimes we forget. And is that 1 second that you kind of slip the mind and you put confidential information in the model, which can have very dangerous repercussions around that as well. So we spoke about also AI decision making should ensure that the users understand how the data is being processed and how the decisions are made. Jason, you refer to that this learning models keeps on learning, and sometimes we don't know how that happens, but you still as a professional accountant needs to be accountable, to be held accountable. You need to know what happens with that model, how it's learning and what's it doing with the data. So you're able to verify that. If you're an auditor, you should be able to verify that information as well. And we spoke about that the organizations must have legal and internal accountability structures specifically around that. The other element that is AI ethics is something that all employees should have training on how, especially on when they are part of the decision making around these models as well. So they should know about the ethical training around this, and also being able to have the whistleblowers. So people should be empowered to raise concerns and not have fear for retaliation when they are seeing something that's happening wrong. Even when you speak about these models and biases that's being noticed or unintended consequences, if you're aware of that, you should not be afraid of raising those concerns as well. So this is not just a tick box exercise. Ethical practices is not just a tick box exercise. It's really kind of ingrained in the organizations as well. So yeah, it becomes living part of your organization.
Okay, I think ethics is I don't think it will come out naturally. Okay, maybe I'm generalizing, but you know, what will come out naturally in discussions is what are the financial benefits, right? You know, what are the security around it? But ethics, really, it's not a topic that is you know, that is like foremost in their minds. So I think what Jeanne is telling us today is that ethics needs to be at the forefront, right? When we want to think about implementing, when we want to think about rolling out, you know, into the whole organization, we should not sideline ethics, right, as something of an afterthought. Oh yeah, you know, I think we should consider this. It should be the underpinning. I guess there has to be some sort of emphasis from the top to the bottom. So I guess it has to start with the top, you know, the C-suite, the business leaders, you know, pushing this principle of ethics to be applied, you know, when it comes to AI deployment into the company. Yeah. Yeah. So it's a very important point, you know, and as accountants, as I said just now, we are stewards. You know, people trust us, you know, for what we do. People trust us for the data that we have and how we process it. So, you know, ethics is a very, very important part. So since we are on the topic of ethics, Jeanne, next question is, how can organizations ensure that their ethical guidelines are not only aspirational? Means, you know, it's good, right? And we can always have a slogan, or we can always, you know, preach it from the top. But are also practically integrated into the development and deployment processes. Do you have any practical tips that you can share with us?
Sorry about that. I just wanted to gather my thoughts.
Oh,
So,
okay.
so it's and I would ask you to humor me just a little bit in the sense of referring to the IESBA code and the new technology provision that came into effect that you as professional accountants should be aware of, that came effective the end of December last year, that has actually helps us as professional accountants to navigate the rapid changing around technology. And there's a few key principles around that. So these provisions actually enforce the accountability of the professional accountant in safeguarding confidentiality. And confidentiality is so, so important. We spoke about that. But with that, the IESBA code actually added a new definition on confidentiality as well, and additional application materials. So with these additional materials, not only requirements, but application material to provide you with lists and the things you need to consider when you are dealing with confidential information. It's also the new standard also deals with ensuring data integrity and also maintaining this ethical conduct when engaging with technologies, not only artificial intelligence, but all technologies as well. So if we talk about data access and processing, so I'm sorry, I think I'm responding to the wrong question.
Oh, it's all right. It's all right. You can carry on.
Sorry.
It's how do we practically integrate into the development and deployment process? Yeah.
Yeah,
maybe if you want me to jump in, John?
Yes, you can, Jason. Sorry. Let's carry on.
Yeah, I guess we talked a bit about something earlier, right? Of course, having a framework with ethical guidelines is very key, and having the right checkpoints. And if you think about it, maybe some examples. We talk about performance and evaluations within an organization. Let's say we use AI to drive a lot of that, and it may start to get certain conclusions, or it may start to lead you to actually, like, on some of these cases of performance, maybe we should let go some of these certain people. I think if you think about it, then a machine would drive certain specific behaviors, but a human, or in many of our cases, we have certain sort of ethical guidelines that we would need to consider. And therefore, if we come back to the core of it, I think one of the key items in terms of practical considerations here is that you have to have the right validation points, and regardless of what is the outcome of some of the data, the human needs to take some final responsibilities there. I give you another sort of scenario. Let's say we have an AI system to profile crime and crime rates and so forth.
Yep.
And this is probably very common in the Western world, where political correctness, right? And maybe then crime becomes very tied more specifically to certain racial groups, things like that. If you let a machine handle the decision, you would start to actually almost focus all your policing or all your law enforcement on
particular group of people, right?
Correct, because that will actually drive a reduction in crime, right? But if you think about it from an ethical or human considerations, that should only be a factor of consideration, but not let go some of the other core things or principles we have in terms of law enforcement, justice, fairness, and so forth.
Yeah. I've seen, I do not know whether this is fiction, but they can even predict whether that person is going to commit a crime.
Yeah. So I think, because of machine learning and things like that, right? One of the famous cases we've heard before, or that's been shared with us, right, is that they can predict in your household whether one of your children, one of your kids may be pregnant or something like that. And so basically a US company started sending you brochures related to maternity stuff and things like that and so forth. And, the parents didn't know, but eventually found out that, hey, my daughter is actually pregnant, and it was hidden from that aspect. But it's sort of things that it learns from you. And you think about another thing, right? Yesterday night when I just got home, I asked my son, because of my desktop computer, right? I asked my son, are you facing some problems? Because I was using it the other day and I noticed it was like stuttering in a sense that the performance was quite variable, right? I noticed it was stuttering. I asked, hey, do you notice anything wrong with our computer? He said no lah. But the funniest part is on Instagram, I started to see computer repair stuff there lah, on my social media. Now, of course, is it listening to me? Is it learning from other patterns, things like that and so forth?
Yeah.
All those are in question, right? But really, all of it is from machine learning.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, actually, machine learning has been with us for a number of years already. We probably just didn't realize it.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, let's move on to the next question that I have. So what mechanisms, I think maybe we kind of answered that. What mechanisms can be put in place to ensure accountability and responsibility for AI actions in a way that addresses all three dimensions: trust, risk, and security? I guess the short answer to that is, as accountants, we do still have a role to play. We cannot take 100% lock, stock, and barrel and say that, yeah, this is what the output is, and this is what our decision going to be. We still need to kind of eyeball, whatever that output decisions that the machine may propose. And ultimately, the final decision still lies with us. So for now, I think we still play that role, right, in safeguarding and in ensuring that the output from the machines, will not contain biasness, something that is, I guess, discriminatory, which I know, as you mentioned, Jason, it happens in the West, and it's a serious issue. But it can happen here as well. So we need to be very careful with that. Yeah. And anyone else got anything to add on this? What other mechanisms can be put in place?
Bryan, if I can jump in, maybe in sort of other mechanisms, thinking about trust specifically. So you think about training, it's having mandatory training and continuous professional development on AI ethics and governance. So this will ensure that professionals possess of the skills, and this will build the trust specifically that you want to have within the process that you are developing as well. On risk specifically, and I like referring to the code includes new sections about complexity. So you can't think of an AI model that's not complex. It's very, very complex. You don't always understand what's happening in the background. So from this introduces the ethical risk of assessment. So the AI life cycle decision. So you need to know exactly what's happening throughout the life cycle. So this can be done by formal evaluations with data integrity, the algorithms of the biases, or even the unintended consequences that this model has. So thinking about all of these things as well. So if you think about the conceptual framework, and the conceptual framework is how you identify threats and how you're supposed to address it, and evaluate those threats as well, but also the reasonable informed third-party tests. That other person on the other side, how would they see that as well? So that's always your check in the sense of how they would understand it and how they would deal with that. So it's very important to kind of apply the conceptual framework in that regard as well. If I think about security in the other senses, we spoke about confidentiality, and I spoke a little bit about confidentiality earlier. Confidentiality is also now a new definition, like I mentioned, in the code as well. But it also says that as you need to develop AI-specific data governance protocols around confidentiality. You can't just use information out there. You need to get explicit authorization according to the new provisions in the code. Even if you do AI training, and even if you clean the data, so you're removing personal information or sensitive information, you still need to be aware of that. And that's the things that we mentioned earlier in the sense of how to be aware. You did say ethics is not always this natural fit or that comes around, but applying the conceptual framework and applying the fundamental principles, if you go back to basics, you'll actually be able to identify those threats if you start thinking about them. the conversation that we had today is like really thinking practically about how that happens as well. And then lastly, and I'm gonna as on oversight as well, we did emphasize earlier that it's the tone at the top is also, but the human is also being accountable. When you are relying on those models, you need to make sure that that is checked. You can't just accept it for what it is, especially when it's very highly sensitive information. We referred, I think there is a court case that was where an attorney referenced court cases. He used ChatGPT. It's just at the beginning when ChatGPT, Jason, you remember, you know the case. He cross-referenced specifically these cases without double checking, and they were all fictitious. So it's a sense of really double checking or what you are, especially if you're using those chatbots or tools of research or information that you're using, especially also when you start giving that not only doing analysis or giving advice to your clients. Really check your facts, because the bucket stops with you as a professional accountant. You are accountable for all the information. Thanks,
Okay.
Bryan.
Well, I can say that in Malaysia, we're going to be checking anything that's going to come up with flags now, from now on. Okay, Amir, anything you want to add on from the NAIO perspective, about ethics and how do you all see ethics?
I would like to touch a little bit on the ethics that you mentioned earlier. I mean, we can have the documents ready, but how to ensure that people are following the ethics using AI and etc. Right? So just to share a little bit on what NAIO is doing at the moment. If you don't already know, we are working together with some of our partners. We have a working group that ongoing at the moment that looking into regulation policy, sovereign AI, safety, governance, ethics, security, and talent. So the progress right now is we are still developing. These are the people from industry, academia, as well as public sectors. So we bring these people together and put them in this group, particularly based on their background and their preference, and then they are working on the documents for each of the sectors. So one of the working group, as I mentioned earlier, is the governance and ethics. So once the document is ready, how we want to ensure that if you want to do AI or apply AI or adopt AI, they need to follow this documentation and guidelines, right? Once the document is ready, we're gonna work this together with the Jabatan Standard Malaysia, Jabatan Standard Malaysia, JSM, to make it official, right? So means that we have the experts from the industry itself, which contains of the academia, industry players, and public sectors. And then once the document's ready, we'll bring it to JSN, and then they bring over all these other experts to like review and give some thoughts on or make some amendments. So once that ready, then Jabatan Standard Malaysia will make it official. And so that's how we ensure that the ethics is followed by the playbook or the guideline itself, right?
Okay. So based on the point that you have shared just now, so actually this kind of covers the question that I have. How do you see the convergence of trust, risk, and security shaping the future of AI development and adoption? Right? And I know for a fact in Malaysia there are a number of startups, right? They are developing tools, right? Some of them are using existing AI tool and somehow trying to integrate with some middleware so that it can pull data from an existing source, process it, and then come up with an output, right? So anything you want to add, to add on to what you have said?
Okay, so when it comes to data, like we discussed earlier, whatever the data that we want to put in, we need to make sure it's like the integrity of the data. It's to ensure that the data it's a real data, because it will influence the AI output from whatever that we from the data set itself, right? So what we are trying to do from NAIO's side is we are working together with CGSO, which they already have an open data portal, data.gov.my, which any agency that have an open data that they think that they can share the data, they can put it in the website itself. So whenever the the type of the data is open, they will put it in the website so that all these industry players or whoever would like to request the data from them, they can just pull it in, and I mean, just to train their model or do some POCs on the AI algorithm, right? So yeah, so that is one of our initiative on the data part to ensure. And then on the second part, we are looking into a playbook. We are working together with CGSO again to look at how whenever people put in data, how do we ensure that the data is how do I say it, a clean data that can be used for this use. Yeah, so yeah, we are working on a playbook and maybe a checklist. So from the data given, we'll check from the playbook. We will follow the playbook and then the checklist to ensure that whatever data that being put in is something that can be useful. Yeah.
Okay, so can I say, Amir, that any companies who want to get involved or go deeper into this, NAIO, would be a very good reference, like
correct. Yep.
very good go-to point, right, for them to look at the guidelines on what they can do, what they should not do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So can I share a little bit more on our deliverables? You don't mind, Bryan?
Okay, please. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, all right. So this year there are 7 deliverables that we need to deliver for the year of 2025. Number 1 is the AI technology action plan from 2026 to 2030. These are to strategize the roadmap, which to enhance Malaysia competitiveness and foreign investor confidence. Which why we want to have this is because how we look at AI. Malaysia as a government is we don't want to be just adopters. We want to be a producer as well. So yeah, so that's why we are looking at this paper. Number 2 is on the adoption of a regulatory framework, which is a framework to promote ethical and sustainable AI adoption. Third one will be the acceleration of AI technology adoption, which promoting a widespread of AI adoption in main sectors in Malaysia. Number 4 is code of ethics. 5 is the AI impact study on government, which is we are assessing the impact of AI in government public sectors. So what we are doing right now, we are collaborating with Google. We are supplying the public sectors with some of the AI tools from Google, and then from there we assess the report, right? How these tools can help enhance or make our public sectors more productive in a way. And number 6 is the National AI Trend Report. This is to look at the market overview and on the trend maturity in selected sectors, which is now, at the moment, we are only focusing on 6 sectors, which is the healthcare, agriculture, transportation, public services, SMEs, and the last but not least is the education. And the last one, which is the data sets related to AI technology, which is we would like to develop data to develop and implement tailored initiative for a specific target groups. Yeah.
All right. So a shout out to NAIO. It's the go-to agency, right? Anything to do with AI. I guess this is the first point of contact, companies can go to. Okay. It appears that we have a number of questions. So I actually have one final question, but I'm going to leave it right at the end to make sure that all of you stay. Yeah. So now my final question is, how do you think accountants should equip themselves as we see AI governance becoming more important in the future? What skills are required of them? Okay. And I think as accountant, you will want to know that. So please stay on. We will tackle the questions now. Okay. So I will take the first one. So go by I think this one go by the number of votes. Okay, much of the company's data resides in proprietary ERP systems, HR systems, emails, and so on. How can we enable our AI systems to access this data without compromising security and privacy? Maybe Jason, you want to take this on?
Sure. Well, I think the first one really, if you look at it, this answer is a bit like on a spectrum, right? You either unleash the AI on everything, which is a bit like if you think about it, how ChatGPT has actually learned everything it has. It's probably not something they will admit officially, But what the AI has learned, if you think about it, is almost from every potential source. So you may have heard also, for example, accusations against DeepSeek and why ChatGPT won't sue DeepSeek and things like that. Just put that to one side. But there's always speculation that the AI has learned from anything possible, including copyrighted data that is not authorized and so on and so forth. And that's probably on that side of the spectrum. The other side of the spectrum, I think Amir mentioned it a bit just now, will be data that only you feed it. Specific model, create the data, cleanse the data, identify what you want to feed that data, and really somewhere then in between, right? So how do you manage that? If you think about it, it's really controls over your data, access controls and others as well. And just to share with you a story, HR system here, there was an interesting use case that was shared by a client, really in terms of getting HR data and so forth. And accidentally, for some reason, the actual AI system also learned about everyone's salaries and salary bands. And you could actually query it and find out the salary of people inadvertently, right? So also be careful of what data that you share with it, if you think about it. But then access controls and actually data or protecting the actual pieces of what you want to share is important.
Yeah. So this was actually a discussion we had in one of the board meetings as well, that while we have to protect our data, right, the use of data, at the same time we also do not want to turn off the staff from from using it, because if there's so many guardrails, so restrictions, right, in terms of using, then it's also not beneficial, right? Because the company needs to evolve, right? And company needs to use AI tools. So really it's finding that kind of balance. And I think a lot of companies are going through that process, right? It's not easy, because especially for those companies that has a lot of consumer data, right? Internal, yes, it's also important, but when you have all this private consumer data, I guess it's even more important, to figure out, to what extent can the staff, can the personnel use that data, and how often, and what kind of tools. So that kind of safeguards all need to be put in place, right, before before the company can be encouraged, right? Go ahead and use it, go ahead and try it out.
Yeah. And just to add to that, although it's not really on this question, I think what we traditionally find actually is that the practice of the use of AI within the organization is incredibly varied. And if we go back to our organizations, we'll probably find a few people who are the sort of like outliers and so forth. And they probably use AI in their day-to-day jobs. They may potentially contravene things by pumping some of your data to external AI and things like that, but usually those are the exception cases. And then we find a lot of people actually only think that AI can do the stuff like ChatGPT or what you see in social media and others, and therefore they don't do anything in their organization. And probably how the organization is going to move to the next level is getting a base level of usage. Because if you think about it, some of the potential productivity gains are incredibly high, in just doing very basic office stuff, collation of reports, collation of data. For example, us like consulting firms, right? Coming up with slides and reports,
Absolutely.
Yeah. I like asked one of my team, you're taking like 2 days to come up with this. Can we just get a draft that AI generate and then you review the draft? Maybe we can get it done in 4 hours, something like that.
Yeah. So I am a practitioner, of that a PPT generator.
Absolutely. Yeah, wonderful stuff.
Yep. Okay. Let's move on to the next question. What warning signs should professional accountants look for when evaluating AI tools or processes to avoid potential ethical violations? Yeah, this is a good one. What warning signs should we look out for? Anyone wants to take this on?
Bryan, I'm going to start and ask Jason and Amir to jump in afterwards. But if I look about it would always depend on the facts and circumstances. So it's very difficult to look at this just in isolation and give an extensive list of what should be considered. But you should always be, if you refer back to the code, the self-interest rate. So maybe the data that's the AI model is used is not what you actually want to use it for. So it's not the right information, or the model is not exactly what you want it to be for. So that might not be a right fit. In that sense, that might not be ethically right. So you might not get to the right response. So that's one way of where there's potentially a self-interest rate, which is because you're biased towards using a specific model or based on the specific information. It might also, the technology might not be appropriate because you're kind of forcing, maybe it's your boss forces you to use a specific technology, or you're supposed to use the specific AI model because so much money is being thrown towards it. So that's a self-interest rate. So you should always be having this open, we spoke about mindset, this open, being aware of any ethical that might be wrong happening. You have this mindset of what should be wrong, what's right, what's wrong, how you should apply it. Is it the right data? Is it the right information? Is it the right approach that you're following? So it also might be that the violation might be that you don't have the competency. You don't know how the AI model has been built. You don't have the competencies of understanding this information. That's an ethical violation with the code in that sense. So you need to educate yourself. It's having the right competencies and the skill sets as to understanding how this model is working, so you're able to explain it if someone asks you. So if you are unable to explain it, how are you able to rely on the information as well? And also it's how it's been designed and developed. So sometimes there is that self-review threats. There's a section in the code that you're not supposed to rely on technologies that you have or that you were involved with in developing. So especially when it comes to assurance engagements. So these are some of the threats that's contained in the code that you need to be aware of. It's not the full list, but maybe one of the others can jump in.
Yep. Anyone wants to chip in? No? Okay.
Well, I think on a quick basis, right? And I think Jeanne put out in quite a few key considerations. We also talked a bit about it earlier, right? Validation and so forth. Only reminders, I guess, I want to talk about. If you think about it, you've got to assess that risk in different parts, lah. What is the use case we're trying to fix? What does that tool actually do, or really what we do there? And one of the very simple ones, for example, is that if we use a software from external party, commercially available AI, the one very clear immediate warning sign, of course, is that what does it do with our data, right? I think, Bryan, you pointed it out right at the start. We are feeding the photos to it. What does it do with the photo information that we had? And I think if we look a number of years ago, there was a very popular photo app that it sort of ages you, right? What would you look like when you're older? What will you look at when you're younger? Nobody asked the question, what does it do with your photo, especially in the age of facial recognition, which is a very key thing in security today. And it is also a challenging security technology to authenticate people. So things like that we need to consider, but start really with the use case. Look at things like what happens to the data. Look at it in terms of what you can control, and of course, then the outputs.
Yep. So just to add on, the point I wanted to bring across is competency, and Jeanne mentioned just now. So this is really a hint, to accountants, right? When we talk about upskilling. So this could be one area, because before you can even talk about warning sign, right? We have to understand how it works first. Before we can even say that, hey, this is wrong, this is not working right. But how do we get ourselves into that position? So we need to upskill. So therefore, competency is a very important part. Okay, thank you very much. Next question is, what metrics are most effective for measuring for measuring trust in an AI system?
Yeah, I think everyone's quiet, and I'll jump in by saying, I don't think there's an easy answer to this.
Yeah.
And I don't think in the industry we've actually established a metric for trust
Yeah.
in the system. So almost there's like no answer in this area per se, right? If you think about it. Of course, you can look at it from surveys and so forth, right? Let's say we deploy a chatbot, surveys in terms of like usage, responsiveness, customer adoption, things like that would imply some levels of trust, and increases or decreases in those levels would have certain implications to that, right? You could also then have other sort of metrics in terms of like frequency, the reliability sources and so forth. How often do people wait on the line or things like that, or how fast you get back. So those are some secondary metrics, but I don't think there's an industry established in terms of what we will get there. Very much tied to what our use case is.
That's right. That's right. So from my experience as well, with the myriad of AI tools out there, so what I do is certain things I throw into it, and it comes out right with the output, and then I do a comparison. Okay, then over time I realize, hey, Gemini is much better than ChatGPT, for example. But it's an over time thing. I think it's just like humans, right? I mean, we don't trust someone like 100%. It's an over time, when you observe the human, when you interact with that particular person, then you build the trust. So I think the same goes with the machines. It's not 100%, you just throw something into Gemini and then you trust it 100% completely, right? It's over time as the machine learns and as the machine gets familiar with your style, your approach, how you want the answers to be drafted or crafted, then that's where your trust, in that particular machine grows. Yeah. So that's how I see it. Okay.
Bryan, if I may
Sure.
just
okay.
add on, I mean, some of the dimension that we can add on to look at the measure. How do we measure trust? I mean, it is my opinion or my suggestion. We should also look at the security, whether the system are safe from tampering or data leaks. Number two is on the privacy. Does it like protects data, like mentioned by you and Jason earlier, as well as the user confidence. How do we measure user confidence? It's like Jason mentioned, it's through the regular surveys or NPS, Net Promoter Scores. Yeah. So those are my suggestions.
All right. Thanks, Amir. Okay, let's move on to the next one. It's also on trust. What advice would you give to organizations just starting their AI journey to make trust a foundational part of their strategy? Yeah. Jeanne, would you want to take this?
I'm going to pass for now, Bryan. Sorry, and just...
Oh, no worries. Yeah. Anyone else?
Sure.
Jason?
Yeah, I guess to me, the main advice is that don't just look at one principle, right? Many of the foundational AI frameworks in terms of how we govern AI, multiple principles that there are. For example, in Malaysia, I think we use 7 principles. A lot of it, we talk about things like transparency, fairness, security, so forth. So you want to look at it from that holistic perspective, not just one. At the end of it, I think as we started today, driving trust does require a lot of these items. So maybe the advice, first of all, look at the different principles, number one. Second is have a sort of simple operational governance model. And then probably a good place to start is your technology deployments, or looking at it within an organization. Are we using it internally, or are we deploying something with technology that has AI components? Okay, do I need to do something about it? And the simplest backbone to that is risk assessment. Does it contribute to some additional risk? And do I need to manage that risk in some way or another? Maybe if I just jump in for a split second, Bryan, I think you asked a question on security just now that maybe we didn't go into during the panel. But very often, I also get asked a question, because security is probably my core business, right? Does AI create any new security kind of measures or things like that? The short answer is no, or not really. Our traditional security models or our protection defense strategy still works, because at the end we come back to it. What is AI? AI is an application and data. It's a system and data. And we've already grown through the years how the security protect application and the data related to it. Of course, you still need to consider other factors in terms of output, how you can trick AI to give questions it doesn't write, to give data that it shouldn't give out. Those is really in the operation side. But in the basis of security, things like access control, network security, all those things are still in play. Yeah, very quickly.
That's right. Amir, anything you want to add on this?
Yeah, just a small one. Talking about security, when it comes to people, process, and technology, I would like to add one more from Jason, to invest in people. So maybe you can provide AI awareness training for all employees, not just on the tech team, but the user as well. So that from there we have a balance education level of AI or awareness on AI on both the team itself, and also to encourage a speak up culture where anyone can flag a concern if AI results look off or a little bit of unfair. Then we can relook at the data set or the algorithm itself, right?
That's a very good point, Amir. That's a very good point. Yeah. So training is a very important piece as well. When any organization embark on something that's new, right? So training to be provided to the staff so that they understand, right, how to use it, not just how to use it, but what are the potential risks, if they use it incorrectly. Okay, let's move on. So there's a specific question for you, Jason. Are there examples where lack of trust in AI has resulted in public backlash or policy changes? What can we learn from them?
Wow. Thanks. Yeah. I thought we weren't doing specific questions. Kidding. Yeah. Maybe, I just now I shared a couple of examples, but maybe one thing that comes to my mind, in terms of worry, if we look last year, there was that famous architectural firm, right? And they had a branch in the UK firm, and the one that built the Sydney Opera House and things like that, they designed that. And basically their Hong Kong office transferred a huge sum of money because of a sort of online, either a Zoom or Microsoft Teams meeting, and instructions that was there. I think one thing you can think about in such a case is that the advances in AI, we know today we can make computers talk with your voice, with your mannerisms. Today we can get images almost in real time. I could pretend to be somebody else. For example, even right now, I may not be Jason, right? I think we haven't totally reached that point yet. We are still probably be able to identify to some extent, but the speed of it, to be fair, is pretty scary. And I would venture to guess maybe just within next year, or definitely in the next 2 years, we have totally automated people. For example, I saw in the show Shark Tank. Some of you may watch Shark Tank, right? There was this guy proposing actually a product they're trying to sell, that they will attend meetings for you, and you never need to attend meetings. It learns from you. It will attend all your online meetings. It talks in your face, your voice, and everything else. I think AI will be there. And therefore, you think about it, some of the real policy changes that we would go into, you wouldn't want to make decisions based on some of these online meetings, so forth, and how we practice some of these things. We probably got to change that, and the level of trust that we practice based on decision making. So I think awareness is going to be one key thing. The other part to me is some of the core important decisions, we will probably need to double check in some cases. And it doesn't sound like a great thing, right? But it almost going to lead to sometimes mistrust in many cases. Because if you receive a phone call from your chairman, please make this transaction now, sounds exactly like your chairman. And we know in security world, they can fake your number. These are things that we are going to face with, and we may not have a great answer today, and needs more skepticism.
Yeah. So maybe the first question, we ask, in any online meeting nowadays would be, how do I know you're the real Jason?
That's right. Yeah.
Bryan, if I can jump in, I actually
Yeah,
watched someone that did training on LinkedIn, and they developed an AI model, Jason, based on what you said, and he interviewed himself, and this AI model actually responded in the way that he responds to questions, very similar. And when after the interview, they asked the guy, well, would you have answered the questions in that way? And he said, yes, this model actually responded pretty accurately in the way that I would responded, framing the answers in that way. So we're not that far off. It's very, very scary. And you mentioned the voice and just the misuse of AI models and the security around it. That's really, really very to be aware of what's happening in the world out there. As we deploy AI models in our organizations, it's similar, just that the flip side is being abused or misused on by the fraudsters in that way. So whether it's your voice that's being recorded, it sounds that your CEO is authorizing you to make a payment of an X amount or whatever. So to really be kind of wary and having this professional skepticism when you engage with all your interactions, especially in today's age.
Yeah. So this question is directed to Amir. How fast are we, implementing policies, right, to address all this, potential risks, of people misusing AI? Is NAIO, driving this? Because it seems that we are playing catch up, right? Because it's happening so fast. Are we playing catch up, and how can we do this better?
Okay, as I mentioned earlier, as we speak, we have two tracks actually. Number one is the working group that they are working on some documents, and the other one, we are working together with some of the third party to come up with the paper, especially on scams, security that relates to AI itself. So the paper would be ready, if you ask me, plus minus in October. So once it's ready, we will publish it, especially on our website. Do visit our website if you guys want to check out more. So then from there, again, we will talk to all these governance or related party. As one of it is Jabatan Senate Malaysia. Also, on top of that, in November, is going to determine what's the direction for NAIO. Are we going to focus on innovation only, or to be regulators, like, for example, MCMC, so that we can have this AI acts for Malaysia itself? That will be determined later on. But as we speak, the work is ongoing. Once it's ready, I'll be happy to share it with you guys for reference.
All right. Okay, great stuff. I think speed is everything, right? When it comes to AI.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to ask this question, because I'm assuming also that there are auditors, in the audience. So this could be a relevant one for the auditors. So from an audit perspective, how should we evaluate data generated by AI tools? Is it necessary to audit the AI tools themselves to ensure reliability and integrity? So Jason, coming from a big four audit firm.
So the answer is yes, but I want to say that it's actually there's some difficulty to this, right? So if we talk about it, I think the audit should really focus on the governance of AI. And therefore, what you would audit is really that whole life cycle we talked a bit about earlier.
Yep.
The perspective of the use case, design, the data, the actual algorithm considerations, and the operationalization. So focusing on auditing on that is going to be probably the best way in terms of managing the risk and from the perspective of assurance for the auditor. Now, I explained a bit on that. On a traditional computer system, maybe the output will always be fully explainable. And you will say explainability is one of the foundations of AI. But unfortunately, with machine learning, the truth is we will not have perfect explainability in some cases. we don't fully understand, or you would not be able to fully get, for example, connect all the dots and why it came out with these things. We may have certain assumptions in terms of where that process came into place, but we don't know why exactly it may reach some of these things. And these are some of the things that we will start to have to face when we handle AI and machine learning, because it's really that difference today in how some of these systems work, right? So auditing in terms of the governance process, the considerations of risk is probably where we want to come into play. Data sources and things like that is one of it. But you want to concentrate on that whole part is probably my recommendation.
Okay. Anyone else got anything to add on this? No?
Bryan, maybe not specifically on from how to audit, but maybe just referencing to the sister board, the International Audit and Assurance Standards Board is actually currently busy with a project specifically on technology, recognizing specifically what Jason just mentioned about not always being able to understand, being able to audit this. So this might be a space for those auditors out there to kind of monitor the work that they're doing in this regard and see as that project is evolving. So I just wanted to flag that.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I think we are coming to a close of this session. So as I mentioned just now, there's one question that I want to ask all the panelists is, how do you think accountants should equip themselves, as we see AI governance becoming more important in the future? What skills are required of them? So maybe Jason, let's start with you.
Sure. I think two core parts, right? First part, I think we've already talked about, being education and awareness, being in touch with what's happening in the industry, what are the concerns, for example, like, usage of AI within fraud, financial crime, how it can impact me, how it can impact my organization. That's the first part. Probably the other part is really to build on a bit of what I said earlier. How can we, within our business unit, department, division, or our job function, utilize AI more, and in a way drive up a sort of a minimum level of that. And I think about it, if we move into the future, it's actually just going to be any other part of computing, right? For example, Copilot is probably built into your browser today, how it answers questions and so forth, no longer just a web search. But how can we integrate that into a lot of our business processes and our day-to-day? And I think that will probably be the thing that gives us the most benefit, at least in the current term of how we can use AI.
Okay, but what are the skills that accountants need to have?
You need to understand technology a bit, of course, keeping in touch. But the positive thing today is that I think if you think about it, AI has become almost so user-friendly. You almost need less tech skills,
Yep.
and if I give the analogy of security, when I first started doing security, the way we break or hack into systems, we have to use multiple tools. We have to scan the system with one tool. We have to then find what are the vulnerabilities and do some research. After that, we've got to search for sample security code. And then I've got to edit that code to target the particular system. So I've got to understand all these parts well. And then I've got to use a compiler, a programming compiler, to actually compile the code to attack the system. So I need quite a bit of technical knowledge to do all that. Today's security tools is one click. It does all that. So if I bring that to the AI analogy, you don't need to use all that, the systems. You just need to ask it what to do. It will do all those things for you. So I think the adoption is easier in that sense. Then it's about for us finding out how we can integrate that into our day-to-day work.
That's right. Yeah, so the integration part it's important. And that's what I've been telling people as well. The tools are out there in the market, right? The tools are there. It's really a question of how do you use the tools and integrate it as part of your company operations. Of course, with all the guardrails. So as accountants, I think we need to be curious. Curious to find out, what are the tools out there, and can I use it, for my day-to-day work. All right. Jeanne?
Thanks, Bryan.
Any advice to the accountants?
Yeah, so I'm going to echo what Jason said. I think digital literacy is so important. You need to know and I'm not going to hammer on that, but that's key. You need to have the knowledge around, especially if you're using artificial intelligence or using these AI models. The other thing, and we spoke about this, is critical thinking and professional skepticism. So you should remember having that mindset, and we spoke it as kind of the theme that has gone through the whole time today as well. Is definitely having that critical thinking and professional skepticism in all the actions that you do through everything that whether you're in business or whether you're an auditor or just performing accounting work and using any technology, not only AI as well. And then I'm going to say something, having that ethics and governance acumen. You need to understand the fundamental principles in the code of ethics to apply them. You need to be, it's core to us as professional accountants, and apply them to identify any threats that you might become across. As we can have another 2 hours of discussion, we even won't get all the scenarios out there. So really having this mindset, being critical and open, and understanding and applying the fundamental principles to identify all the threats and applying the conceptual framework. It is the code actually has these tools. We spoke a lot about what of these governance models have about transparency and fairness, and I actually wrote it down, a few of them, the safety, accountability, and all of that. It's actually all embedded in the code as well. So just applying that, and with the new technology provisions, there is some practical examples of how to do that as well.
Yeah. So, Jean, when you mentioned professional skepticism, it really reminds me of the accounting profession, because that's what we need. That's what we are taught, in our university days, professional courses. There has to be that kind of mindset. Okay, so and it applies to this AI area as well. Amir?
I think Yuen and Jason have covered most of the points that I wanted to talk about. But maybe what I can add a little bit on the skills that they need, basically on the data literacy, to be comfortable with handling data, or knowing how to clean up messy spreadsheet, spot missing values, and check on obvious error. I think that's one of the things that we require in order to get the output like really meaningful. Yeah.
Okay. So with that, yeah.
Okay, Mr.
With that, we want to end this. So as you can see, I didn't draw this. It was an AI. But I saw a picture of this, which is very similar, in one of the podcasts, and this picture, I guess, depicts, how, we should treat AI. So the robot represents the AI, and you can see very clearly it wears a seatbelt. Okay. So, and this is how, we should consider AI, when it comes to implementation into the company, in our company operations. We got to make sure that the seatbelt is on. We cannot allow, the robot, to drive wherever, and, risk, getting into a crash, right? So this picture, hopefully, it encapsulates what we have discussed. And just to conclude, trust is really the main pillar, in this TRISM framework, that we have discussed over the last 2 hours or so. And we really need to start with that. Make sure that whatever AI tools, whatever machine learning that we use, trust is really underpins that, and trust also underpins the accounting profession. So it's not something that is, not very familiar, for us as accountants. So we spoke a lot about, change management. So if you want to implement, make sure, it's not just the IT department implementing, it's the whole organization. All right. So this comes from experience, and I think a lot of the other panelists mentioned as well. Don't work on this particular project alone. You need to bring in the different departments together, and that has to be a collaborative efforts, you know, in ensuring the success. Okay. Yeah, so with that, I conclude the session. Thank you very much to the panelists. I'm sure the participants, the audience has benefited, you know, from all your sharing and your insights. You know, we look forward, you know, to an exciting future, you know, as AI becomes more and more integral, you know, not just in our companies, but I guess it's going to be part of our lives. All right. So with that, hand it over to Nurul.
Thank you, Mr. Bryan, and our panelists, Mr. Jason, Ms. Jeanne, and Mr. Amir, for the wonderful discussion. And thank you, everyone, for sending in the questions.